I tell them I'm going to see a deceased family member. Several people have died in the previous few years, and we have a family tomb area, if you like to call it that. With the most recent death of an immediate family member, I tell them I'm going to visit them 2 or 3 times a week. But I don't. I'm not sure if this is a mental obstacle or where I want to go, but I can't. Instead, I stop at a nearby tavern for a burger, fries, and copious amounts of drink. If you're wondering why I don't turn up intoxicated, it's because I've always had a really high tolerance for alcohol. My whole family does. I suppose it's a side effect of coming from a family with drinking on both sides. Perhaps this is why alcoholism is prevalent on both sides. I do not know. The thing is, I want to go. I'd like to visit them. But during the last month, I've gotten about 5 minutes away and panicked, so I just went inside the pub. It's also the only time I drink. I don't tell them because we have children. And when he gets off work or it's the weekend, I know he wants to spend time alone, but I want to see my family. But then I get worried and consider having him and the kids accompany me to ensure my safety. But I don't enjoy expressing my feelings in public, so it won't feel right. I'm not sure why I posted this. Maybe I feel like a liar out of guilt, but every time I get 5 minutes away from the graves, it seems like I smashed against a brick wall. I try not to visit since I know I'll never make it, but I want to. I'd be curious to know whether there is a general consensus among people on whether or not the husband knows. I mean, I'm not a big drinker myself. Is it conceivable for persons with a high tolerance to consume copious amounts of alcohol, as described in the OP? Turn around, return home, and pretend they went to see their relatives or anything. Lie about everything, and don't appear or smell inebriated. Nobody in Portland commented. Do you suppose he can't tell? You need to be more honest with yourself because if you're drinking too much, he'll notice since he can smell it from a mile away. Only an alcoholic, or a youngster believes that others cannot smell alcohol on them after drinking. He is aware of your lies, and has decided to accept them because he believes you are cheating, or because he does not want to know, and is unable to accept reality in his presence. I was him at one point in my life, but now I'm divorced from her, and free of all her nonsense and falsehoods. So stop doing it, and improve yourself to be better for your family and marriage, before you damage them. Or much worse, someone driving inebriated. Also, hello, my name is Steven, and if you appreciate weird Redditor admissions, please like and subscribe below. That being said, our following story is about a girl at school who dislikes me, because she believes I desire her guy. I really want her. I'm not very interested in labels. We are all humans, and crushes occur naturally. At least that's my perspective. This girl that one of my classmates is dating is simply stunning. Except she noticed me walking with her boyfriend. I'm the baseball club's manager, and he plays on the team, so it was all professional. And it started a rumor that I wanted her boyfriend. I shrugged it off and didn't think much of it, until I met her a few weeks later, and called her pretty, which she misunderstood for me attempting to win her over, because of her boyfriend. In fact, I had been experiencing fantasies about her. I'm attracted to her in a manner I never imagined I'd be with a girl, because my thoughts normally turn to guys. I'm not going to confess, because I don't date anyone, and don't picture myself totally with a lady. She's hot, though. I'm not going to tell OPI what they should or shouldn't do, what their hearts should or shouldn't desire. All I'm saying is that it appears there is still an opportunity for OP to figure out what they genuinely want, desire, or are comfortable with. I mean, it just seems weird to me that OP could say, I'm having dreams about this person. They're really hot. I couldn't imagine myself with anybody like that. It's truly none of my business, but why? Kitty. There were no show comments. I wouldn't rule out dating a girl if you discover you like her. In my experience, the connection can be a lot more intense and overall better. Just saying. You should probably make it apparent that you do not desire the person. However, as someone else pointed out, you never know what the future holds. OP replied, I've made it clear she doesn't believe me. It's weird how attracted I am to her, but not to him. Kitty no-showed and responded, stating it would be worth exploring with other girls who aren't her. Girls are soft, beautiful, amusing, and all around delicious. Getting out there wouldn't hurt, and it could help you get over this girl. Genuinely. Best of luck with whatever you decide to do. Our next story is about my imagined girlfriend. I would never admit this to anyone I know in real life, but I do have an imaginary girlfriend. I'm a typical 30-year-old guy, but I'm bad at socializing in relationships. I do not have any pals or anything. I just can't do the social aspect of life. I've never had a girlfriend or even been attracted to a lady, and I'm not going to start now. I'm ugly and can't talk to ladies, so it won't happen. So I just made something up. I'll talk to her and pretend we're heading out to do something fun for the day. Sometimes I have imaginary companions and plan a double date, a board game night, or anything. Exactly how I imagine a typical social life to be. It does not interfere with my work in any manner. I'm not going to call in sick and pretend to be with her. I will just go to work as usual, have a normal day, and when I get home, I'll have dinner, then go directly to bed, close my eyes, and think we're at the aquarium or playing minigolf. To be honest, it's my favorite way to spend my free time. As I previously stated, it does not interfere with work, food shopping, or other activities. I know it's not real, and if somebody asks if I'm in a relationship, I'd answer no. But it feels wonderful to pretend, right? I'm not saying what OP is doing is getting more frequent, but it seems like every other day. I see a statistic stating that 45% of guys under the age of 23 have never approached a girl or something similar. Is it because everything is so dating app oriented? Is it that social media makes everyone feel as if they aren't good enough to be wanted? Johnny Christ, 97 commented, escapism is a relatively common phenomenon. The majority of us want we could have better lives, and it's occasionally nice to picture a world where that's the case. However, if allowed, it can be quite detrimental. If counseling is a possibility for you, you should consider it. OP answered by commenting, I've seen several therapists regarding my loneliness, but it's never truly helped. I've tried going out and being more social, but when you don't have any friends, every encounter feels strange and weird, and others look down on you. I'd rather spend my free time doing what makes me happy right now. Our following story is about my 22-year-old female lover. The 23-year-old female decided to take a sabbatical. So, as the title implies, we talked a lot yesterday, and I told her that I don't want to break up. And if that's what she wants, she needs to say so. And she did not split up. She simply opted to take a break. We slept in the same bed yesterday, and today I transferred my belongings to another room. And I am completely devastated. I already miss her so much. I miss everything about her, including her laugh, smile, and eyes. Also, she said yesterday that she had psychologically broken up with me some time ago, and that all I needed was someone to talk to because I was slowly going nuts. She was the only person I could talk to about my problems, and now I can't. Which hurts a lot. I realize I panicked out a lot, but I still want to repair it. And I'm hoping that after this break, she will desire the same. You know, from experience, I can honestly say that most of the time, if you take a break in a relationship, it's almost like a breakup, because there's such little opportunity for recovery or healthy healing from something like a break, especially when it comes to an open relationship split. Jesus, Jericho commented. She's gone, buddy. Take it from someone 10 years older than you, who was in the same situation a year ago. I called her bluff during the break, and she had a new apartment within 5 days. It is not a myth that women usually have their minds made up long before they make their move. It makes no difference whether they communicated it in a healthy or unhealthy manner. Our second case involves friends who saved images of my wife, Kate, a 28-year-old female with a close friend who operates a women's apparel business in our town. Kate assists her by modeling some of the clothes for the store's website, primarily dresses and other ensembles, but also some swimwear, and she is delighted to help and enjoys it. Kate did something different for Valentine's Day. She modeled some new lingerie and underpants for the site. It drew some attention from our families and friends, but in a positive way. It wasn't much different from the bikini images she made, though those were cuter, and these were more sensual, albeit still tasteful. On Saturday, one of my friend's wives informed me that she had discovered 3 of these new images on her husband's phone. She didn't specify how she found out, but she was concerned and stated she felt I should know. I don't know what to think about this. It feels like a violation, although these images come from a public source. I'm also unsure whether to inform Kate about this, so I believe the line here is quite clear for OP. Because, as much as OP enjoys trying to reason with, it's on a public website. There is still a distinction between your pals supporting your wife and ogling her with saved photographs on their phone. Whether those images were public or not, the focus should never have been on whether he had lawful access to them. But what is he doing with those photos? He's not keeping them to shop for his wife. Astro 318 said, I'd say Tyler because he's in the friend group and bound to slip out. Don't allow her to be caught off guard, or have no time to comprehend the information if it slips out anywhere. How should I feel about it? It sucks. It's one thing to know your wife is lovely. It's quite another to have it verified in such a way, which is not her fault. This shouldn't stop her from doing what she enjoys. It sounds like a major issue in other couples' marriages, though not in yours. Personally, I would not make it bigger than it needed to be. Our next tale is that I just found out that my autistic uncle is homeless, and I am really concerned. I'm 17 and haven't spoken to my mother's side of the family in about 10 years. My mother's mother suffers from an undiagnosed personality problem and has refused to meet me or my sister since discovering a broken permanent garden fixture. It wasn't even relevant, and we didn't breach it. She simply determined that we did. I wasn't too unhappy because I didn't like her in the first place, but because of who she is. None of us could speak to my mother's siblings, so we just don't communicate with that side of the family anymore. I was at work tonight, and a dude strolled in. Despite the fact that it had been nearly 10 years, he still had a full beard. He is over 30 years old now. He had the same eyes, so I knew it was my uncle. He has autism. Not overly serious, but the kind that would require him to live in a home or have a social worker visit him on a regular basis. Or something on his way out. He came over. We hadn't spoken since I was 8, and we were talking about how long it had been. He rolled his eyes as he responded. Yeah, because of all that crap with my mom. And I knew he wasn't on good terms with her either. He then informed me that he was living alone, which I was relieved to hear because the last time I saw him, that was not in the cards for him. We talked a little more, and he mentioned he was glad to see me before leaving. I contacted my mother to tell her I had seen him, and she asked how he was doing, and I told her he was living alone. She asked where, and I said, it's just across the road from here, my work. She went very silent for a few seconds before saying, that's for homeless people. I'm really worried. It's small. They are literally cargo containers. They're just large enough to accommodate a bed. Many of the residents are drug addicts, not drug shamers. I'm just scared that he will get engaged in stuff he shouldn't. Even if he had a social worker, they would not allow him to reside there. If he lives there, he is not speaking to my grandmother, which implies he is not speaking to anyone in the family. He is an autistic man who is alone, homeless, and without support or family. The few people around him are also destitute and unable to aid him. My mother is going there tomorrow to see if the homeless shelter would let her speak with him, and if not, she plans to leave her phone number so he can contact her. He's a nice man, and I'm concerned that he doesn't have the assistance he requires. I think it's fairly sad that everyone on that side of the family appears to have abandoned him and left him to fend for himself when he's not really a person who's fully capable of doing so. I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to establish that contact. And if he truly requires assistance, why shouldn't it be reasonably simple to connect them with organizations that can assist? Maddox Belly, 23, stated that your grandmother is certainly terrible, but the rest of the family that opted not to speak to you and your brother because of her is much worse. OP answered, saying, I don't think they do. I've never been furious at them for it, and neither has my mother. I know how my grandmother would have felt if they had chosen to side with us. If they had continued to speak with us, she would have kicked them out. She kicked my mother out when she was 17 and pregnant, and she became homeless because she had nowhere else to go. My mother is the only one of her siblings who is not autistic, and I will never be angry at those who require assistance to survive. Choosing the option indicates that they have that support. My girlfriend, a female, 23, and I, a male, 23, got into a fight over a ridiculous TikTok meme. For reference, she is a fan of an artist named B Hubby. She's been to her gigs previously and is trying to convince me to like her music, which I appreciate, and I will do my best to enjoy and support her. I generally listen to hip-hop, and she doesn't like it as much, so it works both ways. For the past few months, there has been a meme circulating on TikTok comparing singers who can and cannot sing. It's a sarcastic joke about Badu, an artist who can't sing, and rapper NBA Youngboy, paired with an utterly terrible video of him performing Can Sing. Personally, I found it hilarious. Bibadoobie recently uploaded a TikTok tirade about this meme and her displeasure, with people calling her an artist who can't sing, despite the fact that the implication was that she could sing. And it greatly irritated my partner, especially since Bibi blamed men, claiming that men are jealous of her success and are constantly attempting to bring women down. I told my girlfriend it wasn't so serious and was just a stupid TikTok meme. It pissed her off. She began to blame me, claiming that I was a part of the problem, that misogyny is firmly ingrained in men's thinking, and that she was disappointed in me for dismissing it as a joke. We haven't spoken properly in 2 days, and I'm not sure whether I should laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation or console her. So, here's the contradicting part. The OP regards this meme as a silly joke, like they regard it as something unrelated to gender or putting someone down. It's like that idiotic meme where they choose a rapper and say, this guy can sing. All is well. The problem is that type of meme on TikTok, especially when the comments are cruel, will bring a lot of misogyny. So there will undoubtedly be a great deal of hurt and fury directed in that way. But when it's brought back to WAP, who only viewed it as a silly joke, I don't think they'll completely grasp how bad it is. This is the behavior of everyone on the internet. To put it simply, if you have any type of online following or popularity, you will receive some horrible comments, some of which are intended solely to tear down your entire identity. When I look at my comments here, I feel like I'm cringing and waiting for the next perfectly constructed comment to give me the next decade's worth of insecurity. Like, I can't blame somebody for being furious over any ridiculous narrative that circulates. Mad Gear. Missile Kid replied, I believe you are missing the point. I believe the artists understand that it is a joke, but that joke is also generating a stream of weird-s to post weirdments on our social media, which is not okay. Dismissing it as a woman who simply cannot take it as a joke is really misogynistic, and honestly makes you look really stupid. And if you can dismiss that, it wouldn't surprise me if you dismiss a lot of other things with your actual girlfriend. You can say she's going through a feminist phase or whatever, but it appears that you don't really take her seriously or value her thoughts or feelings, and would rather complain on Reddit than talk to someone you know better than we do. So there's that. This next story is about my dearest pal. Try to set me up with a guy who later became her boyfriend. So my best friend kept gushing about this fantastic guy, and pushed that I meet him. She psyched him up, suggesting we'd be great together. I finally agreed to go on a date, and everything appeared fine until they spotted something unusual. Perhaps he appeared uneasy, or he accidentally muttered something about our mutual friend that sounded too familiar. Then I discovered the shocking reality. This guy was my best friend's boyfriend. It turns out she was testing his loyalty to see whether he would cheat or be tempted. But instead of simply talking to him like a normal person, she chose to bring me into the mess. Now I have to make a decision. Expose my best friend's devious plot, tell the guy what's really going on, or simply walk away from the turmoil and let them both deal with the consequences. We matched on Bumble, as many of you have asked. My best buddy made a Bumble account for me, and the first thing she did was suggest we go on a date. I believe the responses will vary here. I'd love to hear your personal thoughts. If it were me, I would tell this guy the truth since I don't want to deal with that on either side. I'm not in this game, but if I were that guy, I'd want to know if my lady is creating these weird, idiotic date loyalty arrangements. And, finally, what does this guy think? This looks like the girlfriend set it up for them, and then pushed them on a day. Does he know who OP is? Is he aware that this is arranged as a date? So, how is his loyalty being tested here? The second anecdote involves my father pulling a pew-pew on my husband last night. My parents came from out of town to celebrate my 7-year-old's birthday. My dad drove me, my mother, and my child to supper. We chose to try another eatery. After drifting through our first option's congested parking lot, I gave my father directions, and he began to dispute with me, convinced he knew his way around better than the person living there. He then began driving erratically, so I begged him to drive us home. He refused and continued to the next restaurant. I told him to bring us home again, but he refused. I emailed my husband and asked for a ride home, and eventually my father agreed to take us back. He said he was going to punch me in the face. My toddler began weeping and screaming, and my father continued berating me, despite my pleas to stop doing this in front of her. When I arrived home, my hubby was in the kitchen. Words were exchanged. My father threatened to kick my husband's butt in our own home. A scuffle broke out, and my husband punched the side of my father's face, knocking him to the ground. My father then stood up. At this time, I'm heading into the house with my mother and a youngster following after. I screamed when I saw the blood on my father's face. He then pulled the pew-pew and pointed it toward my husband's chest. Needless to say, my folks packed up to make the several-hour return trip home. I'm over any form of contact with my parents, but I mourn the loss of having parents and my child having a grandparent relationship. Any suggestion is beneficial. Still trying to wrap my brain around this. I mean, if I were talking to OP, I would not want to alarm them. But that level of lack of emotional management is so frightening, especially since he willingly drew out that weapon, that I believe it is worthwhile to begin considering your security. If you should engage the police, obtain a restraining order, or something similar. Actually, get some sleep, police, and never speak with them again. You must safeguard your family from them. I often say family is chosen, whereas relatives only share DNA. Your father opted not only to endanger you and your child by driving recklessly, but he also jeopardized your husband's life. He should not have access to any of you again. Our next story is, my mother has finally acknowledged that my sister is a terrible person. My sister is in her early 30s, and I am in my late 20s. Since we were children, my sister has abused me mercilessly. When I was 15, she discovered God and came to me, wailing about how she had treated me, and our relationship was fine for a while. Since I've grown up and stopped listening to what she said, and started making my own decisions like getting tattoos and piercings. It's evident that I no longer look up to her as a starry-eyed little sister. She has worsened her treatment of me. It took me a long time, and a lot of therapy to learn that her enmity stems from her need for someone to step on. And I had been the obvious target for so long that I'm no longer. She's lashing out. She has no friends or previous colleagues anywhere. She worked. These characteristics caused me to dislike her. For a long time, my mother remained neutral in our relationship, refusing to take sides. I did not expect her to. I also don't tell my mother half of what my sisters have put me through, because I've been rejected in the past, including when I told her that as a toddler, my sister held a sharp instrument up to me and threatened me while my mother was working. Anyway, as you can see, my sister is very bossy. For a long time, she'd had my mother wrapped around her finger. That was until a few years ago, when my sister first experienced religious madness. That made both me and my mother realize that her word is not binding, and she is not all-knowing. She was sectioned and then released some months later. She refuses to believe anything was wrong and claims that I put her in the hospital. Literally impossible. As a result, they received no further therapy after discharge. She is currently experiencing religious psychosis, but this time, it is much worse. She has capacity and understands what she is doing. Therefore, sectioning is not necessary. I officially cut her off 2 years ago, after a very horrible disagreement in which she said some vile things to me, such as wishing I would get ovarian cancer and die. She refuses to apologize. Things have been worse in recent months, and she's been especially hostile. Today, my mother finally informed me that she does not blame me for not speaking to her, and that after everything she has done, she would not speak to her either if she were me. In the middle of extreme tension, it seemed like a minor victory. My mother and father have both tried to compel me to communicate with my sister in the past, even when I tried to cut her off. The same old we're family bulk crap. I knew my father would never come around, but I'm delighted my mother did. I simply needed to vent. I wish I didn't have a sibling. I'm not sure if there's been enough intervention, medically, psychologically, perhaps, especially parentally. In any case, OP now has that door open where they can appreciate what OPS has been going through, and aren't worried about being flooded with the word family. Continue talking to her. Come on, bull. Nick's 1978 comment. Is your sister maybe schizophrenic? Has she been evaluated for a diagnosis? I am delighted you are defending yourself. She'll find someone else to blame or continue accusing you, but will seem silly because you can't see her. Our following story has a 22-year-old boy who is likely to be sued for a car accident that occurred 2 years ago. To begin, I'd want to inform you about my current circumstances. I and my partner, a 21-year-old female, had a newborn boy. Unfortunately, he was born prematurely at 32 weeks, so he is in the NICU as I type this. And he is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. This means that my girlfriend is unable to work, and as I will now be living with 2 children, one 4 years old and one newborn, I must work. I earn less than $15,000 per year. My entire earnings go directly to rent. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money left over for food. Return to April of 2023. I had just concluded my work shift at 10:00 p.m. and wanted to go home and sleep. Obviously, this is the point at which I get into a car accident. The worst part is that it was not my fault, but because there were no cameras and we collided in our automobiles, the authorities determined that I was at fault. So, in addition to having to repair my entire front bumper, I had to sit there knowing I was being blamed for something I didn't do. Now fast forward to today. Almost exactly 2 years later, I receive a call from my insurance company stating that they did not accept the $40,000 settlement offer and may seek the full coverage amount of $100,000. If they don't, they will sue me directly. The person I hit evidently needs surgery and wants that money to pay for it, despite the fact that she acknowledged having a prior back issue. I still need to pay her, given that I make little money, just had a baby, and must support 2 children and 1 adult. I feel creeped out, and it's making me lose faith in humanity. This happened 2 years ago, but I had already forgotten about it. I don't understand why somebody would do something like this. I understand that there are some messed up people out there, but this is excessive. I have not even gotten my son out of NICU yet. To be honest, I enjoy thinking that humanity is wonderful and that God exists. But even if I had sinned, I don't know what I could have done to deserve this. I do my utmost to be a nice guy and a parent to my girlfriend's 4-year-old boy, despite the fact that he is not mine. To show the world that my parents treated me better than their parents before them. And things like this, with my girlfriend in the hospital for weeks, a baby in the NICU, and now a car accident. I apologize, but I'm losing trust in almost everything. To be honest, I'm not sure what to say in this scenario. Besides, I think I'd feel the same way. What resources can you tap into in this situation to perhaps assist? Andrew Beatty remarked. First, if they're suing for that much money, the legal process will take months, if not years. So, time is on your side. Second, your insurance company is compelled to defend you, which means they will pay for or assign you an attorney. Third, even if they win and obtain a judgment, all you can do is apply for bankruptcy. You won't even have to pay court fees if you make this much money. Yes, you will have a bankruptcy on your credit report for 7 years, but you will owe them nothing. Make sure your attorney understands what you intend to do. They can use it as leverage to compel the opposing party to accept their offer. If they do not take the money offered by the insurance company, and you file for bankruptcy after they sue you but before they receive the verdict, they may wind up losing everything. They can no longer collect from you. That means the insurance company does not have to pay either. And in a variety of situations, they will wind up with nothing. Our next story is about my child being a child again. I do not think I can do this again. My 50-year-old male child, who is non-binary and 24 years old, has reverted to childhood. I don't know what to do, and I'm not sure if I can do it anymore. As children, they were extremely reliant on me and their mother, my ex-wife, a 53-year-old female who coddled, isolated, and insulated them from the world. This was because my child is autistic, and my ex believed that this was the best way to raise him. Obviously, we couldn't shield them from everything, as they were constantly bullied and used, even by children younger than them. Everything came to a climax in middle school when my ex and I separated. It was messy and traumatic for our child, as they considered terminating things and became despondent. They scarcely attended school, yet they managed to get into high school. I homeschooled them as much as I could in middle school, before sending them to a small private school where they wouldn't be home all day, and could perhaps meet some friends. Obviously, this did not work out, and they spent the majority of their high school and college years alone. It disturbed them, but they also struggled to interact with others their age. My child resides with me primarily, because my ex had a relapse in anger management, and I believed it would be best to do so before this happened. My child has no interest in working, because they are frightened of being alone at work, and prefer something more distant and flexible. I was able to help them find a part-time job while they finished school, and learned how to do the duties that my spouse insisted they never learned. Last month, a family member on my ex's side of the family had a medical emergency, so my child went to stay with her mother to be closer to the hospital, with plans to return home soon after they were discharged. They returned home last week, after spending over a month at their mother's residence. They don't open anymore. I discovered that they had dropped all of their classes this semester, and had almost completely stopped coming to work. All they do is lie in bed, watching Bluey. I ask whether they want to do anything, and they reply they are exhausted. But how can they be exhausted if all they do is sleep? I can't go back to having a lazy, unproductive person in my home. I can't continue to financially support them. I can't go back to them refusing to open up when something plainly happened. I know that this family member did not die. So, what happened? I am so lost, tired and puzzled. I tried to be pleasant, and when I eventually snapped, they shouted, kicked, and cursed at me. Exactly like the tantrums they threw as children. I can't do it anymore. Years of therapy and support for them, and it was for naught. 1 month damaged all of my child's work toward being a functioning adult. And now I'm back to having a budget, and praying that I can make ends meet each month. If they don't get their act together, they'll go back to mom. She can handle them this time. Not me. It's just an overall depressing story to hear. Like, I sort of it. OP is completely fatigued, but I despise the rhetoric they're sharing. I can't take this much longer. I'm just going to kick them back to mom and let her deal with it. I get it. There doesn't seem to be a clear road forward, but leaving your child is equally unacceptable. The correct one, Kitty. There were no show comments. Both you and your child require support. It isn't only about one or the other. It is reasonable that you are unable to handle the regression. But then it's time to consider group home solutions. Because mom is also not a good match. Best wishes. Our next story tells how I gambled with my girlfriend's money, and lied about it. My girlfriend and I have been together nearly 2 years. She and I both take financial responsibility seriously. I was broke last week, but I was confident that this parlay would pay off. I made up some nonsense about needing $100 for a work cost that would be reimbursed. She did not hesitate to transfer the funds. I feel like a piece of junk typing this. Anyway, I placed the bet, and against all odds, it paid out $5,000 for a $100 stake. I was ecstatic, but I quickly realized I had a problem. How can I justify unexpectedly having so much money instead of coming clean? I purchased her an expensive $1,200 shandbag that she'd wanted for months. I told her I had been saving for it as a surprise. She was over the moon, sobbing and all. Meanwhile, I am sitting there feeling like the biggest phony. I saved the rest, but I can't stop the feeling of guilt every time she uses the bag and compliments me on being so attentive. I feel worse. The relationship is based on trust, which I've completely shattered. Part of me wants to be honest, but I know she'd be crushed to learn that I not only gambled but also lied about it. What began as a simple deception has evolved into this entire charade. I truly love her and regret that I betrayed her. Trust in this way. I know I should tell her, but I'm frightened of losing her. I have stopped gambling since this incident, but the damage has already been done. Well, I believe that if he wants to make amends for lying to their partner, he should first stop lying to himself. I just don't see how someone could. Right? I made up some nonsense about needing $100 for a business expense. Anyway, I turned around and bet the $100 I lied about, but then went on to say I'm responsible with money. I would be willing to bet that the majority of people who hear this narrative will not believe the OP is entirely responsible. Okay, Train 2644 has commented. If you were prudent with your money, you wouldn't be dead, broke, and gambling, my guy. Take this as a life lesson and remove the reward pictures. My stepdaughter refuses to stop weeping, which is our next story. The norovirus went through my house like Marshawn Lynch, and I'm quarantined in our bedroom. This week, our girls are with their biological mother, but return home to us every day after school. My husband informed them that they could not see me because I was sick, and we wanted to keep them healthy. My youngest began crying because she was unable to touch me and wanted to see my face. I will not lie. I started crying and felt deeply loved. I'm absolutely relieved that there are no true viruses that can infect someone like Marshawn Lynch, at least in time. They will be allowed to reunite. Tiny Green Turtles wrote, "This is so sad, but Marshawn Lynch got me out. I hope everyone feels better soon." Video call. I spent a lot of time in the hospital when my children were young, and while it wasn't ideal, it helped. We used Facebook Messenger or Snapchat to play with filters. It was a pleasant distraction. All sorts, 2003 remarked. That's both delicious and harsh. It's difficult to be in quarantine and unable to console your child, but the fact that she wants to embrace you so badly demonstrates how much she cares for you. Such heartfelt moments. Dear pal. Our next story begins when I saw how long the maid of honor's wedding speech was. I insisted on delivering my best man speech first. My older brother, a 43-year-old male, married in 2024, and I, a 42-year-old guy, was the best man. I've always believed that these remarks should be brief and straight to the point. Funny. Endearing. But move on. When I timed my written speech, it was always hilarious and fast-paced. I was there for around 4 to 5 minutes on the morning of the wedding. I'm speaking with the maid of honor, and she whips out this folded-up book report. 7 or 8 pages, typed and double-sided. She's already a long-winded and sluggish talker, so this will be exhausting for everyone. The intention was for the maid of honor to go first, and the best man second. A few minutes before lining up for introductions, I tell a quick lie that my stomach has been bothering me all day but feels okay now. Would it be okay if I finished my speech first, in case I need to go to the restroom quickly? Both the bride and the brother agree that they do not want any timing. There are some flaws in this strategy. Does this make sense? The maid of honor has no idea. I asked the DJ to announce me first, and that was that. My speech was a hit. The bride gave me a few big chuckles and happy tears. It concluded with hugs and applause. I finished with pride. What followed was beyond my ability to describe. The maid of honor was significantly less comfortable speaking in front of 250 people than she had anticipated, and a glass or two of wine did not help. She was shivering, talking, taking long pauses, and occasionally becoming tipsy and loud. Because there was no podium, she fell behind all of her pages about the 10-minute mark. It was just us standing near their table with a microphone. This was a painful 30 seconds of silence. I'm watching her fish pages. Every visitor exchanged glances. I'd think her entire speech was roughly 25 minutes long. I knew her speech was tedious, and mine was brief and difficult to follow. She had to follow mine. To anyone who is delivering one of these speeches, please consider a hard cap of 7 or 8 minutes, but 5 is probably ideal. If you're dying up there while folks walk to the bar, this becomes bad quickly. I'm not sure if I'd ever be invited to such an event, but the idea and concept of being a best man or maid of honor and having to deliver this speech, the pressure to recall all these funny memories and recollections about each other, and then the added pressure of performing that in front of all these people. trying to memorize the speech. I don't envy anyone who has to go through this. That being said, I'm not going to lie. I believe I could write something decent. The pressure would be there, but I believe I could do it. Mr. Hex mentioned that I was at a dear friend's wedding and had spoken with his best man the night before in the bar. I told him that the best advice I'd ever heard was to stand up, say something, and then shut up. In other words, keep it brief and sweet. He nodded wisely and thanked me. I kid you not. The first thing he said when he stood up to give his speech was that some people had told him to keep it short, but that was not his style. Q. And I kid you not. 55 minutes of inane and worthless talking as if he was conversing with a friend in the bar rather than in front of 200+ guests, because his speech was scheduled just after the starters and before the main course. So everyone had to just sit there and suffer. The only persons who could get the dinner served or move things along were sitting at the bride and groom's table, their faces plastered with rictus smiles. Eventually, some folks stood up and walked to the bar, toilet, or whatever, and the musicians, who didn't know anyone and were obliged to sit on stage for the duration, eventually went to the hotel bar. An open bar was cranked up, and then a couple of them passed out, preventing them from playing his speech. FYI, it almost came to a standstill before the now cold food was served. Nobody felt like giving any more speeches, so someone had to find an iPad and connect it to the sound system to get some music playing. Wedding speeches are intended to praise and thank the bride and husband, while also amusing and entertaining the other guests. It is not your time to audition for a public speaking career. Nor is it about you or your ego. Just keep it brief, nice, and emotional, and you'll be good. Two bionic knees speculated that the best man was secretly in love with the bride, or the groom, and wanted to disrupt the wedding. Ruin the food's mood. That's deliberate. Nobody likes to listen to someone for 55 minutes. Students do not like to listen to a professor for so long. Nobody wants to hear the narrative of your friendship. Nobody wants to hear about you personally. They're looking for anecdotes and jokes. A nice anecdote about realizing you were in love with her. Like, I went to see about a girl and missing a party, and they knew he was serious. 99% of the time, a speech lasts too long. The individual is attempting to make the day about themselves. Our next story is about how I was forced to marry my cousin, became trapped in a loveless marriage, and lost all hope. I've lost all hope. I was a romantic who wanted to marry a man I truly loved. But all my hopes were dashed when my mother and aunt forced me to marry my cousin at the age of 16. I was informed I was going to marry him, and we married when I was 17 years old. He was 27 at the time. I've never liked him at all, but once we got married, I had no choice but to try to build affections for him, which never happened. He just wasn't the type of man I could love. To make matters worse, he's my first cousin, and he used to refer to me as a child and sister. When my aunt asked for my agreement, I was surprised to learn that the two of us were planning to marry. I responded that I was a child, and he was like a brother to me. However, she did not take my response seriously because she expected I would not decline. I felt very powerless. Now, at 20, I'm imprisoned in a loveless marriage. What makes the problem worse are the comments I've received from others. Some men have informed me that no one will marry a divorcee. Thus, it is better to stay married than to divorce. These statements had a profound effect on me. My aunt has also told me several times that if I divorce her son, I will suffer and regret it for the rest of my life. All of these circumstances have caused me to lose hope. I can't bring myself to divorce since my aunt warns that I would suffer. I am also concerned that it will make it harder for me to marry again. At the same time, I am unable to stay with my husband, because I have no attraction or feelings for him. I am stuck, and the pain is terrible. I'm not sure where Oprah's sides are, but I'd be amazed if they were in the United States or a place close to it. To be honest, in 2025, I believe there are numerous countries that meet the criteria of arranged marriage. And if you divorce and are left on your own, you may come to regret it. Forever will be a very precise, and most likely very tiny, list. To be honest, I feel like I know so little about life and wherever he probably lives, that it's even difficult to feel acceptable to speculate on what you could or couldn't do. Said that they regard this as a fear technique. Do you personally know someone who is divorced and unhappy? I doubt you'll find anyone, because everyone is happy. Our next narrative is that I believe I am going to leave my wife. I just needed to jot down my feelings and let someone know before I exploded. My wife and I have been trying to have children, but we recently discovered that she does not want them. We're both approaching our 30th birthdays and have been dating for over 7 years. A close family member offered us the opportunity to adopt her newborn, but my wife declined. I've been a husband for more than 7 years. I just want to be a dad. I adore my wife and want to stay with her for all eternity. but I've always wanted to be a parent and raise my own child. I'm now at a crossroads. Either take the baby and raise her on my own, or stay in a marriage and persevere with the woman I love. I do not know what to do. I want to be with my wife, but I also want to be a father. Having one without the other seems like a losing proposition to me. An add-on was added. Thank you for your comments. Let me go into further depth. I was quite emotional and going through something when I wrote this yesterday. When we initially started dating, we knew we wanted children. We've been trying to conceive for almost 5 years. We went to a fertility doctor who said it would be difficult due to my wife's circumstances, but not impossible. They provided us with cost-effective options. My wife does not want to do them. Why? Because she only informed me last night after not having children for so long. She just does not want children anymore. She initially declined, adding, "Not this time." But she has been saying this for 4 years. Not this time. In July, we were able to become pregnant. It turned out to be an ectopic pregnancy. We were devastated to find out. I believe that was the final nail in the coffin of her desire not to have children. The family member already has 7 children, and in my culture, sending children to other family members for adoption through legal means is common. My wife simply does not want children, she stated. I do not want to leave her. That isn't my intention. But I do want children. I've always wanted to become a father. I hope they answered any queries you might have had. I just feel like this is such a crucial juncture for the OP to navigate. And, honestly, it's kind of odd or weird to bring this up on a first date, but it's something that's really vital to know and be on the same page as a potential partner from the start. Obviously, in the OP's circumstance, they thought they were, and things have changed. But OP must determine whether they are content in this relationship without children, or whether they know they desire children, and believe their life is incomplete without them. Because even if she doesn't, the OP does. I am not sure if there are more valid grounds for a divorce than that. Face 29 stated that if you want kids and she doesn't, you should part ways because your ages are similar to mine. Perhaps you can find a woman who wants children and shares your vision, or you could adopt a newborn from a close relative. But, in any case, go with your gut-wrenching visceral opinion. Is it that she does not want children, or just does not want to adopt a family member's newborn? That is a major distinction. It does not appear to be OP's creation, yet it is quite essential. Pregnancy lasts 9 months. That's a lot of time to prepare, which is the most crucial aspect of welcoming a baby into your family. It sounds like this was a surprising development, with a relative proposing to adopt their baby. And depending on the circumstances, OP's wife may have said no for a variety of reasons that have little to do with whether she wants kids or not. This following story is about my girlfriend, who is always picky. Hi. I simply wanted to complain because I'm getting weary of all this BS. My girlfriend is always nitpicking and comparing everything we do. Like earlier today, while she was washing the dishes and I was painting them, she said, "You're not as good at cleaning." I inquired as to what she meant, as I am constantly cleaning, and this was the first time she had washed the dishes in a while. And she said, "You never get the little things, like the baseboards and inside the microwave, like I do." Mind you, I do these things. Maybe not the baseboards in the kitchen, but I bring them into the room because of our dog. I felt irritated and thought, what's the point of saying this? She said it's all right to admit that as a woman, you're not the best cleaner. That really irritated me since I clean the small stuff. Heck, I get what she doesn't. I'm the only one who cleans the restroom. I'm continually removing everything from the sink and shower to clean the walls and the toilet. It's just so aggravating because she's always on a pedestal, as if she's superior to me. She gets irritated when I bring up things she does not do. But when she does, I become defensive or emotional. I'm just growing bored of it and have no idea what to do. My inquiry would be 1. How is the overall communication in this partnership? And how frequently does OP acknowledge and compliment their partner? And, in exchange, how frequently does OP feel acknowledged or appreciated? Perhaps this is a circumstance in which they are not communicating effectively. They don't show enough appreciation or praise for one another. It's regressing to this witchy roommate vibe. You do not clean the baseboards. Oh, well, I pick up the pubic hair from the toilet again. A little Stevie commentary. If you don't tell her, she'll never know what bothers you. Just speak to her. I used to nitpick my guy. I couldn't help it. My mother has always done this to me. Growing up, each time I cleaned, she followed me and told me what I was doing wrong, so now I'm a champion cleaner. My boyfriend isn't. I nitpicked his cleanliness when we were together. He told me it bothered him. It upsets me, too. So I went to therapy. I now know why I did what I did. And I can hold my tongue and simply clean up after him. Growing up, my mother made it seem like such a big deal. It is not. It's only dirt. She needs to know how much it concerns you. And if it's a major issue in your life, you should consider going to therapy. Tell her how you feel, not merely because what she's doing is wrong. Our next story is, I've been using fictitious identities and phone numbers as emergency contacts for the past 5 years because I don't have anyone. Growing up, I was horribly neglected and subjected to a lot of abuse at home. I got a job as soon as I could legally do so, and I accumulated enough money to live independently. At times, I worked 3 jobs at once, but I made it work. I attended community college, earned a degree, and worked in information technology in an entry-level position. I worked for 7 years and paid my way through college. In 2021, I sent out 107 resumes, received 2 interview calls, rejected both, and received 2 job offers. Opportunities don't come along very often in my life, but when they do, I never waste them. I'm just very underpaid. It might be many things. I am a short guy. I am as unattractive as a freak. I'm in the minority. Whatever. I know I'm not worthless. I still managed to make it work. I could accept the low income because they allowed me to work remotely from wherever with internet access. I discovered this week that my workplace is following federal guidelines and returning to work. So I'll have to move closer to come in every day. I actually can't afford a place within an hour of work. That's not a huge decrease at this point, given that my sadness is almost as old as I am. The persistent feeling that the entire world is rejecting me emotionally, physically, and financially. I am just tired. I'm tired of battling to exist in a world that despises me. I'm tired of struggling so hard just to live with dignity. I look around, and all I see is misery, inflicted by evil individuals in command of all of us. I'm tired of all the restrictions that have been in place for years and cause me to automatically lose. I do not have a family. My previous relationship ended with me being cheated on. I got it. I'm supposed to feel humiliated in this life. I'm just exhausted and want to give up. Maybe give me a day off from it. I fantasize about meeting a friend, depleting my savings, and traveling to Switzerland. My best friend and I spend all of our money on nice hotels and ski trips. I've always wanted to go down the road where they filmed the James Bond movie. In some ways, I understand what Opie is going through, especially his daydreams about being able to spend money and travel. I would tell myself that I have a pretty select group of individuals in my life. Like, the number of individuals I genuinely speak with. You could probably count on one hand. I have to confess, I recently adopted a puppy who is a huge snuggle bug. Any of the extremely rare instances where there might be downtime? It's difficult to get there again. When you have a fluffy dog who just wants to sit on your lap. Sucker for Cats left a comment. Have you looked into the meetup? Years ago, I joined a meetup and met a close local buddy through it. That is now not only my emergency contact but also my power of attorney, as all of my good friends and family are 2,000 miles away. It took me 10 years to develop excellent acquaintances where I live, but I refuse to give up. I met this friend one day when I planned to go hiking with a group. One was in Del Norte. He was from the same city as I was, and we have been great friends ever since. I've since made more friends through Meetup, as well as a couple of coworkers that I trust. Do not give up. Sometimes it takes a long time, but if you make even minor adjustments, such as joining a dining group, board games group, book club, political group, or something else in your neighborhood, you will meet someone. Sometimes I despised forcing myself to go out, but after a few times, it became enjoyable. Consider doing something unusual or fun. Our next story is that I despise my wife's sister and don't understand why I, a 29-year-old man, and my wife, a 30-year-old woman, have been together for 14 years, dated for 10, and married for 4. And throughout the entire time, I have had an insane hatred for her sister, for reasons I have no idea about. For background, my wife and I started dating in year 11, and were polar opposites. She is really extroverted, whilst I am more introverted. She would frequently bring me to gatherings in an attempt to coax me out of my shell, but it never worked, including family occasions such as dinners. This is where I met her sister Anna, a 28-year-old female. She is quiet and doesn't say much at these meetings, but when she does, she comes out as cynical and snarky. I despise this, but the trouble is that I am exactly the same way. I am also quiet, skeptical, etc. I'm not sure why I despise her so much, and to be honest, it's driving me mad after keeping this a secret for so long. Not even my wife knows how much I loathe her sister. She would probably slap me if I told her. Can somebody tell me why I'm like this? I'm good with everyone else in her family, including her parents and older brother. I just irrationally loathe Anna. To be honest, I'm not sure where to go with it. Perhaps you might describe it as a gut sensation, and you simply have a feeling about this individual. Or you could look at it a little differently. perhaps more rationally, and ask, have they actually done anything that deserves the OP's feelings toward them? Or is OP rating this book based on the dust jacket that covers it, rather than the cover itself? To be honest, there isn't much to go off of here. It seems like the OP is describing them as attending a family reunion. The sister opens their mouth and declares, "I hate the world," which immediately registers in OP's brain. "This is the worst person I've ever met, and I'm not sure why," Oscar Miss X remarked. "I previously worked with a girl who was eerily similar to me from week 1. She seemed wonderful. We shared similar beliefs and had enjoyable chats. Week 2 is getting a little boring. Week 3 was actively graded for me. Keep an eye on her. The timelines may have been slightly inflated. Maybe it's the likeness that bothers you." Presuming she hasn't spoken or done anything bad, Opie said that she is a really wonderful person, just quiet. "She's never done anything bad to me personally. The worst thing I can recall was early in the dating process, when my wife invited me to a family BBQ and made a nasty remark about my inability to properly cook on a grill, which, to be fair, was factual, but I believe she was just trying to make light of the issue. Our next story is that my wife is unaware that I avoid eating in order to save money. I'm not sure how to start this, but I need to tell someone. But I know if my wife finds out, she would tear herself up for it. Well, I'd say it began after she was laid off at work, and an old injury of mine required a lot of hospital time until she found a new one. So she doesn't make as much as she used to. And I pushed for a raise at work. However, it is insufficient to return us to our previous location. So, the only thing I could control was the price of food. We used to spend $300 USD on food every 2 to 3 weeks, but now we only spend $150 to $200. The only way I could accomplish this was to reduce my food intake. So I might consume a handful of crackers during the day and then prepare dinner for my wife and me. Dinner? My wife doesn't seem to notice this, which is understandable given that we're both trying to lose weight. However, I am concerned that I am relapsing into my eating issue, which I acquired while serving in the military. I was always 2 pounds over my maximum weight, and their solution was to severely restrict what I could consume. This will alleviate the burden of money constraints for a while, but with the harsh cold and snow, my efforts have been hampered by the dreaded utility bill. I am not really looking for guidance. I know there are food banks in my region, but it makes me feel like I'm taking food away from someone who could use it more. I simply needed to share this, because I don't know anyone who wouldn't tell my wife. It is certainly not my role to try to persuade someone who believes otherwise. But, personally, I believe that if you're trying to get by as Oppie describes, there is no shame in seeking assistance from a food pantry. ONC 4921 stated that this would be difficult for you to hear, but you are one of the people who needs it the most. I am not trying to be cruel. I am speaking from personal experience. Accepting assistance when necessary is not a sign of weakness. You are not trying to defraud the system or obtain anything you do not deserve. You're attempting to live until you can get back on your feet. Accepting aid when you need it will help you get back on your feet more quickly. I understand you do not want to make your wife feel awful. You recognize her. We do not. How do you think she will react? Would she become unhappy and make it about herself, or would she welcome the opportunity to assist even though she is unable to work? Support comes in various kinds. Perhaps she might provide emotional support or suggest more methods to save money. I hope things improve shortly. This is the next story. I discovered I have a half-brother. My parents divorced when I was a child, and I have never met my alcoholic father since. He never sent any support money to my mother. My mother only told me recently, now that I'm older. My father kept a secret about his previous marriage before we married my mother, and that I might have a half-brother, though Mom wasn't certain. But she did have a name. My entire life, I believed I was an only child. But, after scouring social media, I discovered the name my mother told me on Facebook, an elder brother. Someone even commented on one of his posts that he looked precisely like my father, which validated my suspicion. I've had so many questions for him. Was my father a decent father to him, or did he desert us both? But I can't bring myself to send the mail. You know, I've seen, especially in situations where the father was awful to both sides, where there's just, like, so much baggage around having a father like that having a half-sibling show up and try to reach out and connect is like such a strange, like, redirection back into the father's direction that one side may not want to even get near, especially if both children resemble the father. Sutton, 1519 observed that while the person reaching out is not your father, it still feels like a mini-me conference. My wife has just met her sisters. She was unaware of their relationship and was content to take things gently, getting to know each other. I believe you should reach out to explore if a connection is even possible. Hello, my name is Is your father so and so? If so, he is also my sperm donor. And I was wondering whether you wanted to get to know me. My mother had mentioned the potential of having a sibling, so I wanted to reach out to see if I had a big brother. When you're ready or inquisitive, let me know, and we can get a coffee. Our following story is about how my fart was mistaken for a gas leak. Yup. It's a true story that I'm not proud of at all. I hope people laugh since it remains a running joke in my family to this day. This was back in 2023. My first work after graduation was as a paraprofessional at a school. At the time, I was dealing with a heartbreak that had left me unhappy and hating myself for a variety of reasons. In my brain, I was thinking, I can't afford a dog, so let me drastically change my body. I chose bodybuilding instead since it's natural for a 24-year-old who finally got into a relationship, only to get dumped by a girl. It was far more expensive than a dog, in case you were wondering. Anyway, I was around 2.5 to 2 months away from my first bodybuilding event. I'm depleted, and carbs are being reduced to the point where my bowels aren't happy. One day, I'm with a pupil on his break. We're out in the hall, and I can't tell if I need to fart or if I'm about to crap myself in front of a first grader. Unfortunately, I let out the most silent yet fatal fart of my life. It was so awful that the parrot in one of the other classes questioned whether I smelled the same thing she did. I responded yes, and she asked if it smelled like gasoline. Panic set in, so I said sure. I didn't blame the student at all. This woman ended up bringing the janitor to see if there was a real gas leak. It took everything I had to hold it together, because I was working alongside my best pals at the time. They're unfamiliar with this story. I was so humiliated that I couldn't admit it was me or blame the pupil. It was so awful that I would have triggered a carbon monoxide detector if it had been in the hallway. My mother and sister continue to make fun of me for it. To this day, I hope it makes others laugh and feels wonderful to be out. So after reading this narrative, I just had to say, you know what else? It probably felt good to get out for a little, Michaeline.